Hey Ottawa, this is your Monday Market Snapshot for the Ottawa Real Estate Market for July 3rd, 2023. Can you believe we're halfway through 2023 already? I'll be sharing not only the weekly stats this week and the sort of end month, but I'm also a little bit on what we've seen in the first 6 months of 2023. My name is Annalee Rice. I'm a realtor here in Ottawa, Ontario, and every week I provide these updates in hopes that it helps people understand what is going on in the market in Ottawa. Citywide, we see that the number of active listings actually dropped back down below 1,800 from what we peaked at last week. This is due to a couple factors. First, we're in the midst of a long weekend, Happy Canada Day, and people typically don't list their homes just before long weekends. The second reason is that we had just switched into a new month, and there's a lot of listings that get canceled. Their expiry dates are the last day of a month, so that usually drops us down at the beginning of the first of the next month. Sales this week were also down by 58, which is pretty significant, but I would say that that's largely due to the fact that there were fewer listings, fewer new listings, and also people are not shopping as much when they're out enjoying their long weekends. Here's the graph form for the things that I was just talking about on the last slide. We see that the active listings are down this week, and also the conditional sales and the firm sales. So we do expect them to climb back up after the long weekend, but we'll see whether or not they get back up to what we were seeing last month. This is the graph form for the new listings and sales. And so you can visually see it here. There were only 307 properties listed for sale this past week. That's a 35% drop from what we saw the week prior. And of those properties, 77% or 235 of them were new to the market, and 72 properties or 23% were relisted properties. Sales this week were also down from last week, with only 224 properties selling firm this week. I do expect that the number of new listings will jump up next week, but we saw June was lower than May on average. I'm not sure if we'll get back up to the number of new listings we were seeing throughout June and May. We'll see. So for the sold properties this week, we saw 22% of the homes that sold this week did not have a conditional period. And that's actually like the lowest we've seen in months for the percentages of uh, firm sales without conditions. So that's good. Of the properties that sold this week, 21% of them were on the market for 7 or fewer days, and 71% of them were on the market for 30 days or less. Of those homes that sold within the 7 days, 60% of those sold with no conditions. Okay, now we're going to zoom into the different areas of the city. When we look at the central urban region, we see a drop in the detached homes that are listed, but a slight increase for townhomes and condos. Sales were down across property types, and though only slightly for the detached homes. In Canada and Stittsville, we see the number of active listings was fairly steady this week. Sales were down this week, most significantly for the detached homes and townhome market. In Barrhaven and Riverside South, we see a drop in the townhomes and condos listed for sale, and sales this week were down for townhomes, but actually up for both detached homes and condos. And in Orleans, we see a slight increase in the active listings for detached and townhomes, while the number of condos held steady. Sales were up slightly for townhomes, while they were down for detached homes and condominiums. Here are the detailed stats for the detached homes across the city, and we still see the conditionally sold average for Barrhaven and Riverside South being affected by that development land. So it's still holding the average sale price for conditionally sold properties up quite high. And here we have the stats for the townhomes. There's not a whole lot of change there. And we have the numbers for the condominiums. Okay, and now since it's the end of the month, I've got the month-to-month average sale price statistics. I include this because when we get the monthly stats from the real estate board, they usually include two different main stats. They use they do year over year. So then you're comparing 2023 back to 2022 when the prices were in very high at the beginning of the year or in free fall, and they weren't very helpful to know what was happening on a more detailed level. And the other thing that they include is year to date, which again gets very skewed when you have big changes happening in the market. So it's also nice to look at what's happening month to month. And what we see this month from May to June, we see that on average, everything stayed fairly steady. The detached homes, the freehold townhomes, and really the condominiums, both row homes and apartment style, they all stayed fairly steady. You'll see the semi-detached actually jumped up, but they're quite more volatile, as we see in the next chart. So this chart is the running changes from month to month all the way back from January 2019. And it brings into focus what's been happening longer term. We've had the upward prices throughout 2023. That's the last 6 dots. Detached homes climbed quite significantly through the first few months and has been a slower climb the last couple months there. We see that the semi-detached, that's the blue line, we see it's been quite up, down, very volatile. But on average, that trend is still moving up. And for the townhomes, freehold townhomes, that's the orange line, it's been a slow climb, fairly steady, but nothing huge one way or the other for the 2023. Condominiums, that's the purple and the green lines, condo townhomes being green and apartments being purple. We've seen a slow increase, but again, the condominium market didn't have the same drop throughout the early part of 2022, so it hasn't had the same climb as what we've been seeing in the freehold properties. Okay, so although I included these charts in my weekly update last week, I have again updated them to capture the full month of data. So this is the months of inventory across the city for detached towns and condominiums. And if you don't recall, the months of inventory is the number of months it would take to sell all of the remaining properties that are actively listed for sale if no more properties were listed, and it's at the sale rate, the number of sales that are happening in that given month. So because we had fewer sales throughout June and a slight increase in, or a continued increase in the number of active listings, that's why we're seeing an increase in the months of inventory for all property types across for June. So detached currently at 2.1 months, townhomes 1.1 months, and then condominiums are at 1.5 months. This next chart is the close price to the original list price. And again, I updated it just for the last week of June, so it now captures the full June stats. We've got detached homes and condominiums both at about 98.5%, and then we see townhomes are at 99.3% of the original list price to what they're selling, and that is very high, but you do notice that it dropped off a little bit this last month, which is due to the fact that we're starting to see a little bit more inventory for the townhomes across the city. Decided to add in one new chart to capture one of the data points that I've been recording throughout my weekly updates this whole year. It's the average days to sell for the homes that have been selling. So detached homes are selling twice as quick now in June as they were in January. So we started out at 42 days. Now the last 2 months they've been down at 21 days for detached homes. For the townhomes, we saw them start out at about 38 days, 37, 38 days in January, and they got down to a minimum of 13 days in May when the number of active listings was very low. And now that the inventory has come up a little bit, it's jumped back up, and now we're at about 16 days to sell on average for townhomes. And condominiums typically do take longer, and they did throughout the year. So they started out somewhere around 47 days there. The lowest they got to was about 26 or so in May, and it just climbed up just a tiny bit in June. And I think that's because the inventory again started to climb up a little bit in June. Okay, so that was a fairly long update, and I hope that it was helpful. If you have any questions about what's been going on or if what's going on in your specific market, please do get in touch. My details are here, and follow along, give it a like. Let me know what you like and what you don't about these updates. Feedback's always great. Have a great week and happy Canada Day.